Hello, welcome to another episode of Despite the Challenges, a show where we showcase individuals who, despite their impeding circumstances and barriers, not only they overcome, turn around their own lives, but they contribute to the society and inspire us in so many ways. Recently, I met a gentleman. He had come to America about 42 years ago as a student in search of identifying perpetual human conflict. He took a couple of degrees in international politics that just didn't cut it. He went on further and further in researching and studying philosophy and psychology. The fascinating research of 4 decades Mark Abraham has put into a bundle of books, 6+ books, and many screenplays. So let's hear directly from Mark Abraham. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me, Rachel.
Glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Tell us about yourself.
Okay, just like you said, about 42 years ago, in 1973, I came to the United States as a foreign student, determined to get an education that would help me to identify the hidden causes of perpetual human conflict. You might be interested in knowing that it is claimed that the world has lived for only 41 days of peace in the past 5,000 years.
Oh my goodness. Let me repeat that. 41 days of peace in written history of 5,000.
5,000, yes. Quite frankly, this was produced in a documentary by a Christian organization while back. And when I watched this documentary, it was just too hard to accept. On the other hand, it was too important to ignore. And therefore, because nobody could really conduct the research on 5,000 years of world history, so I selected 3 ancient countries of Russia, Iran, and China to see how frequently they had fought. And much to my amazement, I learned that, and I can substantiate this, in the course of the previous 1,750 years, these 3 nations had been in wars with one another and with other countries for 1,550 years.
Oh, wow.
Now imagine if you included all nations and you extend it to 5,000 instead of 1,750 years. Indeed, it becomes mind-boggling. And therefore, that is one aspect of it. And therefore, what I learned was that, if anything, they had not exaggerated, but they had underestimated the human behavior in a destructive way.
That's what your passion was, to understand human mind.
Exactly. And therefore, I devoted myself to explore the hidden causes of the perpetual human conflict. And because most of these conflicts take place in international arena, therefore I thought if I get degrees in international politics, then I would get my answers. And therefore I diligently studied and I acquired 2 degrees after learning English as my 3rd language. And although I learned a great deal about world affairs, but I didn't find any answer to my question.
Conflicts.
Exactly.
So, in other words, your 2 degrees were just the degrees not leading you what you wanted to.
Well, like I said, I learned a great deal about world affairs, but I didn't get the answer for those
questions that you were looking for.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, therefore, after I graduated, I devoted my postgraduate studies to studying philosophy and psychology, going all the way back to Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, Confucius from East, hoping that I might find some hints there.
And this was like in a structured program, in a study, or it was a self-study?
No, it was my postgraduate studies on freelance basis.
Okay.
And there too, again, that greatly contributed to my education, but excuse me, I didn't find any hint there either. However, what I noticed was that all these thinkers, from again Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, to contemporary psychologists, being so very fascinated by human intellect, they had studied humans and humanity at large from the standpoint of intellect and reasoning ability alone. And in doing so, they had disregarded another potent mental force, instincts, that works in conjunction with human intellect and jointly issue the commands of everything we do. And disregarding that, that of course, they had disregarded this other mental force, which is instincts, three of which are universally known and accepted: the instinct of sexuality, the instinct of aggression, and the maternal instinct are universally accepted about humans. I identified 14 more instincts, a total of 17, each of which drives its own particular mode of conduct.
I remember you mentioning that 17 instincts.
Yes.
So this is the summary of all your books, of the 17 different instincts that fall into different...
Yes. Originally, like I said, my pursuit was to identify the hidden causes of perpetual human conflict. And yet, every question you try to find answer for, 10 more questions popped up. And then,
of course.
Therefore, I would like to think that I did find the answer I was looking for, and I'll tell you how I reached there. But there were, it unveiled very many human mysteries that resulted in writing 2,000 pages of philosophy book.
So you spent 4 decades coding that information on your own, and I just want to show all the books of Meet Your Playful Mind. This is volume 2, so
yes,
you have a
volume 1 is this.
Okay.
Meet Your Mind.
Meet Your Mind.
Yes.
Okay. The interaction between instincts and intellect and its impact on human behavior. I'm fascinated with human behavior myself, but I haven't done as much study. Maybe I pick up books, but never reason much as you have done. And then you have artistic. Meet Your Artistic Mind.
Meet Your Artistic and Athletic Mind.
Athletic Mind. So
yes.
These are more of a performance-related expression of human skills.
It pertains to, art has been studied. The very first book written on art was written by Aristotle, a book by the name Poetics. And ever since then, it has been studied at the highest level among philosophers and artists to understand art as a phenomenon, what in human mind compels humans towards different brands of art. And the debate still continues. For example, I read a book from Leo Tolstoy, What is Art? He had made a collection of the gist of the teachings of 67 different philosophers who had written a great deal about arts. And he refuted each for different reason, and at the end he uttered his own reason, his own theories that was even less acceptable than the ones that he had rejected. Now, when you critique giants like Leo Tolstoy, you are bound to damage your own credibility. But just to overcome that, I would like to share with you, for instance, he claimed that art is art only if it is at the service of brotherhood in general and through Christianity in particular. Otherwise, it's not art, it's counterfeit. And then not only that, he even went one step further and said that science is science if it is at the service of brotherhood through Christianity. Otherwise, it's not science. For example, hydrogen bomb is not science through this philosophy, because not only it's not at the service of brotherhood, but it's exactly against it. And therefore, believing this, he by name rejected the giants of art, such as William Shakespeare, Beethoven, Mozart, Tchaikovsky, and all the rest of them, Michelangelo, so forth and so on. And he claimed that they were not artists and their arts were counterfeit, which attests to the fact that even he didn't understand what art was, after rejecting 67 other philosophers who had written about art. So what I have done, if I may...
Yes, absolutely. I know we spoke about it and you showed me the research that you had done and the symmetry of these architectural and the handicrafts and the expression and the music and dance. I would like you to explain for our viewers a little bit more.
If I may backtrack just a few steps.
Sure.
This first book, Meet Your Mind, Volume 1, in this book, what I have tried to do is I have disassembled the human mind into its individual components. And I have examined the properties, the mission, and function of each separately. And then, after doing that, when you reassemble the human mind, so to speak, then two things happen. Number one, you acquire an accurate inventory of the mental forces that governs each and every one of us. Number one.
So those are the 17 instincts.
The 17 instincts and also the human intellect that divides into two segments, as I have labeled one of them as the utilitarian intellect.
Yes.
That consists of human imagination, creativity, science, technology, the reasoning ability, so forth and so on. Inventions, discoveries, and these are mental forces that we apply to achieve our objectives, good and not so good, and or indifferent. And then the other portion of the intellect I have labeled as moral intellect, which is our moral compass and then shows us right from wrong and makes humans to become more decent, so forth and so on.
That's, in my words, that would be philosophical or spiritual side of...
spiritual, this segment of the sole function of this segment of human intellect is the induction of kindness, compassion, honesty, justice, fairness, human decency,
the values.
Values, refined values, respecting the rights and well-being of others, so forth and so on. So therefore you have two segments of human intellect, the utilitarian intellect and moral intellect, and these two segments work in conjunction with 17 human instincts, and understandably it becomes seemingly overwhelming. However, when you do what I did through this book, you divide the human mind into different components and understand the function of each. It tremendously simplifies what the human mind, this otherwise complex human mind, consists of, and why we do what we do. And when you take the time and explain it to even lay people, then it becomes so clear. Many of them say, why didn't I think of that?
So you're talking about the brain or human mind, not as it appears as an organ, the frontal and the four parts of the human mind, the left and the right. No, you're talking about what's inside that mind.
Well, the mind is the manifestation of the brain. Okay? Obviously, what we do is commanded by the function of our brain, but that presents itself in our mind. For example, when you are happy or you are unhappy, you are angry, you are creative, uncreative, so forth and so on, all of those obviously stem from the human brain, which has a mass and occupies space. However, these feelings, although exist because we all experience it day in and day out, and therefore we are fully aware of their existence. However, they do not have any color, shape, volume, they do not occupy space, and yet, and therefore they don't have any physical presence. Yet they command physical activities that ranges from a simple smile when you hear something funny to if you are an emperor and with a spark of in your mind you declare war and then very many people get killed. So all of those are dictated by something that, all those physical activities are dictated by the mind, which has no physical activities. And therefore, how this non-physical thing creates that physical activity that ranges in between two, wide spectrum, has been the subject of study since Plato, and René Descartes, among all philosophers, spent the greatest amount of time and had a great deal to contribute to understanding how it works. So, going back to your question about arts, therefore, when you get to understand which mental force longs for what, then after you are equipped to that understanding of human mind, then you apply that to all the major human interests. For example, religion. You get to see the origin of religion in human mind. What for thousands of years have compelled humans to create different religions and embrace it hard and fast for thousands of years. And what in religion renders so many people so combative. And then you apply the same understanding to arts. What in human mind, after all, we claim that humans are the paragon of intelligence.
Yes.
And also humans are a purposeful being.
Yes.
Now I want someone to explain to me how this paragon of intelligence and purposeful being gets so engrossed in lifting one foot to set it down to lift the other in name of dancing and experience magical pleasure in this otherwise frivolous act, or pick up a microphone and make strange noises in name of singing and bring tears of joy to the eyes of very many. So to be sure, humans have been enjoying all brands of art for tens of thousands of years.
Yes.
I document that humans have been relishing art for 50,000 years at least.
Yes.
Okay.
There have
and
been
yet
a lot
we
of
don't
studies.
understand.
Yes.
Then yet we don't understand what in art it is that attracts us. When you get to understand the human mind from this perspective, you not only understand what in human mind attracts humans towards art, but you understand which mental force gets attracted to which brand of art, and why we enjoy music, and why we enjoy stories, films, novels, dancing, architecture, and all the rest of them.
I know you mentioned that most people are interested in art, either in creating or appreciating or enjoying or collecting or whatever they do within art, right? So it's pretty fascinating. So I just want to continue the instinct as you dissect the human mind,
Okay.
and you have put together all this literature. So would you please go into the next topic?
If I may just spend a few more seconds on this.
Absolutely.
About art.
Yes.
Art has been, again, like I said, I can again substantiate all my claims. Art has never been properly understood, and there are few reasons. Through this perspective, I have divided arts into three distinct categories. I have labeled one of them as rhythmic arts, that consists of rhythmic arts, yes.
Okay.
Vocal and non-vocal music, dancing, poetry.
Non-vocal music, just for our viewers, what would that be?
For example, Beethoven's Symphony No. 5 is non-vocal music. There is no human voice in it.
Okay.
But there is human voice in Beethoven's Symphony No. 9, for example, or all songs are vocal music. And then, vocal music, non-vocal music, poetry, dancing, and particular architectural work. These are rhythmic arts because there is rhythm in each and every one of these arts, and that connects with one of the 17 instincts, which is the instinct of rhythm. And when they please and satisfy this particular instinct, the process of this satisfaction is what we feel, what we experience as pleasure, and therefore we enjoy that which we do not understand why we enjoy it, because the rhythm in them is the attractive power and the center of gravity, if you will, that pleases this particular instinct. And then another category of art I have labeled as imitative arts, that consists of painting, sculpture, writing stories, filmmaking, and the art of acting. Because in
performance, some sort of performance.
Yes, theatrical,
yes,
so forth and so on. Yes, in these arts, the artists use their talent and skills to imitate that which already exists. For example, if you are painting nature or a horse or a beautiful flower, these already exist and you are already imitating through your painting. And sculptures, the same thing. If you are writing a story, you get your clues from the events that evolve from human interaction in real life, and therefore that becomes an imitation. If you are an actor on stage or in front of camera, you are either imitating a real person, if the story is documentary, or a character created by the writer. Again, it becomes imitations, and therefore I have labeled this category of art as imitative arts. And then we also have abstract art. Now, because of in the absence of a proper philosophical understanding of art, we insist on meshing all these arts together, many of which has nothing in common. For example, an architecture and story, although both of them are art, they have nothing in common. Dancing and for instance, sculpture, both of them are arts, but they have nothing in common. And however, when you divide them into this category, all the arts within each category, which is collectively become an astronomical number, they all have natural and scientific and common denominator that unite them as a unit. And this again utterly simplifies understanding art, which we have been so evasive for millennia.
Okay. I have a lot more questions than I
Okay.
have time for. So I am so fascinated and I could talk for hours on
Thanks.
this. But I would like to ask you, before we go into the other topics, I'd like to ask you a question. On this show, I have amazing people come in who had either physical disabilities or circumstances, certain health conditions that they would not have lived. Despite that, they overcome. Not only they change their own lives, but they go out and help others.
Yes.
They contribute to the society and community and do amazing things. And I'm always fascinated with when really challenging circumstances come our way, they shape us in some way or another. However, my question for you is that some people, majority of the population, we go through certain amount of challenges in our lifetime. Why just the few people have this ability to overcome? Others, they just remain in pity.
Yeah.
What stops them? Based on your intellect or your understanding of human mind, when we face challenges, majority of the people are fallen. They don't have the strength to overcome it.
Right.
Is it something built in our mind, hardwired in us, or is this something, a positive behavior or the circumstances? What differentiates it?
Well, these are not simple questions, so it requires a little lengthy explanation. And if I may, I have to just backtrack so that what I'm about to say would make more sense. Again, the human mind, your mind, my mind, every human's mind consists of 19 factors, 17 instincts, and the 2 segments of human intellect.
That is the utilitarian
intellect and moral intellect. Yes.
Intellect.
So
okay.
there are 19 of those. And the intensity of each of these varies from one person to another. And to understand, and therefore collectively they form our personality. I approached 2 professors of mathematics and asked them to please help me understand in how many different ways these 19 mental forces would present themselves. They said there's a formula in mathematics known as factorial. And the way it works is that you take the highest number, multiply that by the next highest number, in this case 19 multiplied by 18, then multiplied by 17, all the way to the lowest number, which is 1. And the result you get is how many different ways these 19 mental forces can present themselves.
Okay.
And
so that's the max, which is in millions.
Billions. No, not even billions. Let me just briefly explain. It became 121 million after rounding up. 121,645,000 multiplied by 10 to the power of 9. And the number is so huge, I just couldn't comprehend it. So to make it tangible, I divided that by 7 billion, the number of the current world population, and then the number I got was, again, after rounding up, was 17 million, which is to say that if the current world population was 17 million times as many as it is today, each person would still get a unique personality of his or her own. And that shows the complexity of human mind. And it's no wonder that it is so difficult to understand.
Each other's.
Each other's, yes. And therefore, going back to your question, therefore, as the strength of these different mental forces varies from one person to another, depending on which is the strongest mental force or which few are the strongest mental forces in you, then they drive you most intensely in that direction. And which are strongest in me, they drive me in that direction, so forth and so on. And when some people become handicapped, then that triggers them to defy all odds, I think. And depending on which mental forces are strongest in them, and based on their limited abilities because of the handicap, that drives them so strongly to overcome and to defy all the odds and rise above them and express their abilities, and therefore they put us into shame by the things that they can do. I was watching a one-legged man, one of the legs was amputated, and he was skiing so beautifully. It just put me in shame because I couldn't do that. I couldn't do what he was doing. And
Oh, yes.
there are people who play basketballs with
Yes.
limited number of limbs, so forth and so on, which are truly fascinating and admirable. So this is my answer. So this formula not only applies to those people who face tremendous odds, but also applies to all humans.
So in other words, you're saying that is the mental faculties that we have, people have, which drives them to defy the disability or the impeding challenges that they have.
Yes.
And prove themselves.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's my take. However, many people, because of the complexity of human mind, as I just explained to you, many people get lost in the complexity of their own mind. They do not. There's no way for them to really objectively understand what are their strong points and what are their weak points, for them to focus and to augment their strength and weaken their and also work on their weaknesses. And again, based on this study...
If I can interrupt you, we have a couple of more minutes left. So I would like to, out of these other topics, we don't have enough time for all of them, but I would like you to take your choice pick and just explain on other instincts.
Okay, one of the strongest instincts is the instinct of sexuality.
Okay.
And compared to other species, human sexuality is so compellingly complex.
Yes.
It is because, again, human mind alone consists of instincts and intellect, and each of these segments of the mind issue its own commands pertaining to human sexuality. One of them commands humans to be polygamous, the other one commands humans to be monogamous, and therefore these two opposite mental forces pertaining to human sexuality pull human in two opposite directions, and that renders our species alone as sexually confused, as a result of which people, by their own volition, commit to monogamous relationship through the matrimony of marriage, and then very many people of both genders from all religions, all languages, all cultures, and all races practice polygamy through extramarital sex. And when people are betrayed, it becomes very painful to them. However, through studying this, they understand their own sexuality and the sexuality of their partners. This book, Meet Your Political Mind, shows that politics is not just a profession for the few within each society, but politicking and trickery is a human behavior, is a behavior unique to humans that starts in early childhood. When you observe your children when they are 2 or 3 years old, you will see how cleverly they try to trick you.
Politicking and trickery.
Yes.
Okay, good. And let's just kind of give a few minutes for this. Meet Your Spiritual Mind.
Meet Your Spiritual Mind. Again, this shows the origin of religion in human mind. What in human mind what practical needs compelled humans throughout the universe for thousands of years to create different religions and embrace them hard and fact, and what forces have sustained them, and despite the fact that each religion has tried to eradicate the others, and despite the profoundly strong philosophers who have defied religion, nevertheless they still persist. And also it shows what in human mind compels many people of all religions to become so combative as we see today. People are not only
to fight in the name of religion.
Not only killing one another, but they are willing to die for their religion. Again, going back to a human mind, this shows the origin of all of that, and a great deal more that I don't have time to explain.
Thank you so much. This is so fascinating. We can't even finish all this conversation in one show. Maybe that's a reason to have you bring it back sometime in near future. This is fascinating. This is more than I expected, and I thank you for coming to the show.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me.
For our viewers, when you think positively, the sounds become music, the movements become dance, the smiles become songs, and mind becomes meditation, and life becomes a celebration. Thank you for joining us. I am host Ritu Chopra for this episode of Despite the Challenges. Bye-bye now. Thank you.
Thank you.